Toombs was smiling like a smart kid who had just won first place in the school science fair. He stepped in front of Luke and Diana to make sure that they were looking at him as he spoke. To answer all of the questions that are currently swarming through your minds, Chimera is a kaiju that was genetically engineered from the DNA of a mountain gorilla, a lion, and a sperm whale. He gestured toward Diana. I am sure that Miss Kane can explain the significance of his name. Diana kept her eyes on the monster as she answered, In Greek mythology, the Chimera was a monster that had the combined attributes of a goat, a lion, and a serpent. Toombs giggled. Hence the name Chimera, and given the threat that we are currently facing, I think that his name is more than a little ironic.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni viewer, and welcome to Kaiju Lit Circle, where you learn that giant monsters aren't just for the movies. Today we're looking at a book that presents a kaiju with a very interesting concept. I speak, of course, of Chimera, Scourge of the Gods by Matthew Denian.
Thousands of years ago, there were three sects of gods who shepherded the development of mankind: the Greek gods, the Mesopotamian gods, and the Norse gods. They left Earth in the year 723 AD, believing that humanity had developed enough to care for the planet without divine intervention. In the modern day, the gods have returned to see how things are going, only to decide that humanity has dropped the ball and is in need of a good exterminating. To this end, they start taking turns unleashing the worst monstrosities of mythology on the modern world. Mankind is not defenseless though, for it has Chimera, a genetically engineered kaiju who is 1/3 lion, 1/3 gorilla, and 1/3 whale. Originally created as an American counter-terrorism weapon, Chimera must now defend the whole world from the likes of Cerberus and Fafnir. How will he know who the enemy is, you may ask? Well, that relies on the training of Luke Davis, a teacher who specializes in working with autistic children. Since Chimera's behavior and intelligence is roughly the same as that of a child with autism, it's up to Luke to help make him a hero who can challenge the gods themselves.
Before we continue, there's something I feel I must disclose to all of you. I know author Matthew Denian.
Yeah, it turns out he's a fan of the channel, and he's been an invaluable part of my own publishing journey, for which I am eternally grateful to him. Speaking of which, my book, Operation Red Dragon, has been published through Severed Press, the same company through which Matthew Denian published Chimera and various other kaiju books we'll be getting to later.
I bring this up because, thanks to the unscrupulous actions of a few people, there's a bit of a stigma that comes from when the reviewer knows the artist. But you guys know me by now. I am honest. I don't pride myself on many things, but of the few things I do pride myself on, honesty is one of them.
As such, this review of Chimera Scourge of the Gods is still going to be my honest opinion. The only effect my friendship with Matthew Denian will have on this video is access to behind-the-scenes details which went into making the story.
So, with that out of the way, what is my honest opinion of Chimera Scourge of the Gods? I like it. Technically, it's very rough, but conceptually, it really stands out amongst kaiju stories.
When I say it's rough technically, I refer to the grammatical side of things. Chimera was Matthew Denian's first published novel, and as such, there are lots of issues in regards to how it is written.
Consider excerpts such as these.
Luke was dressed in his hazmat suit when he brought Jason up onto the deck as the Argos was closing in on the city that was once known as Babylon. The line to enter the World Cafe in the heart of Philadelphia's University section was long, and only the most attractive and best-dressed patrons were being allowed to enter the club by the doorman. The common issues are either sentences which are overwritten or sentences with missing conjunctions. However, I can't say I completely hold him at fault for this. As a writer myself, I know how easy it is to words in a sentence.
Wait, what? That was supposed to say how easy it is to miss words in a sentence. See? God's honest truth, I did not do that on purpose, but it serves as a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Hence why I don't feel I can be too hard on him. Even the greatest novels have typos every once in a while.
This aspect can render Chimera a bit tricky to read at times, as it causes the brain to constantly autocorrect what's on the page, but if you can adjust to it, you'll be in for a very different kind of kaiju story.
Perhaps you have heard the old saying, write what you know. Well, Matthew Dennian took that advice and ran with it for the character of Luke Davis. In fact, why beat around the bush? Luke Davis basically is Matthew Dennian.
He is happily married with 2 daughters, and he's a teacher who works with children on the autism spectrum. Both of these go a long way to informing how the story plays out. Davis is not just training Chimera because Uncle Sam tells him to, he's doing it to protect the 3 people he cares about more than anything else in the world, and he was picked to train Chimera because he knows how. The chapter in which we first meet Luke depicts a day-in-the-life scenario that puts him through the ringer trying to keep the students in line, and according to the man himself, that chapter is not fiction. Only the names are changed to protect the innocent.
And that brings us to Chimera himself. After all, Luke Davis is brought in because Chimera is, for all intents and purposes, autistic. But that's not a bad thing.
Chimera may be a fusion of 3 animals, but there's no question that he's intelligent. That intelligence, however, requires a specific set of skills to unlock it, which Luke knows how to do. Under the right guidance, Chimera is able to reach his full potential and change the world.
It's actually quite an encouraging message, one you don't often see in fantastical fiction.
This distinction helps make Chimera different from other heroic kaiju such as Gamera, a distinction further cemented by his power set. In addition to the strength and durability one expects from a kaiju, Chimera also possesses a sonar weapon that he uses to great effect throughout the story. Combine that with his unique mammalian appearance and you have a kaiju who stands out in all the right ways. Oh, and in case you were wondering, Chimera being part gorilla and part whale can be seen as a reference to Gojira, but Matthew Dennian has told me it was not a reference he did consciously. It just happened to work out perfectly.
As far as the plot goes, you can basically split the book into 3 parts. Part 1 is the origin, where Chimera proves himself against the Greek gods. Part 2 is the escalation against the Mesopotamian gods, and Part 3 is the grand finale against the Norse gods.
Each section pits Chimera against a series of monsters which push him to the limits of what he can do. Starting with the Greek gods was a smart move, I think, since they bring with them some of the most recognizable monsters in all of classical mythology. These monsters are the most numerous of the bunch, so the challenge lies not in their physical strength, but in their numbers. The Mesopotamian section is without question the darkest part of the book, as the central antagonist here is a giant made entirely of corpses created by Akikatsu, goddess of death. It spreads a plague that kills people instantly, turning them into shambling zombies who can replenish its body when damage is inflicted upon it, which is a fresh twist on the zombie concept, as fascinating as it is horrifying. The Norse gods are meant to be the greatest challenge at the end, and while they mostly live up to it, especially in how the Norse monsters are of greater intelligence than all previous foes, they do wind up making some mistakes which I won't spoil, but which made me feel that they deserved to lose.
There is more that's happening beyond the main plot, though.
Recruited alongside Luke is Diana Kane, a young college professor with an extensive knowledge of mythology, particularly those myths relevant to the story. As such, her main role is to provide exposition on each new opponent.
Why she specifically was chosen for this above others is never really explained, but she does prove to be more than just a walking encyclopedia by riding into battle with Luke and Chimera and helping Luke demonstrate new commands in the thick of battle.
While Diana could have used a bit more fleshing out, she remains a welcome addition to the cast. At the very least, she gives Luke someone to have a conversation with. Also present on the team are General Parsons and Dr. Toombs. Parsons is a very straight-laced military man and thus doesn't have much in the way of character, but someone like him is nonetheless necessary to a story regarding the military.
Toombs, meanwhile, is the outcast.
He is described as short, fat, bald, ugly, unlikable, and lets all throw rocks at him. This results in him having a massive inferiority complex exacerbated by the fact that Chimera is his creation, but he's getting no credit for it. Oh, and he's a bit of a perverted lech.
It can be a little hard to pin down at times just how much of that hatred is warranted. I guess ultimately we're meant to see him as tragically misguided.
Then there's an entire subplot involving Aiden and Allison, a brother and sister who are nymphs working on behalf of the gods to abduct only the finest humans for breeding purposes. These two, however, have their own agenda, which is clearly meant to be explored in a sequel. But a scene between Allison and Toombs knocks this book's rating up to the not-for-kids tier. I won't give anything else away, though. Trust me, I don't think you want me to.
So is Chimera Scourge of the Gods worth reading? Most definitely. Like I said, it's not without flaws, especially on the technical side, but those flaws don't detract from what is an engaging story with a great kaiju at its core. I'd recommend this even if I didn't know Matthew Denian, especially since Chimera will be showing up again at some point. But let's not get ahead of ourselves just yet. That's a review for another day. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off. Crossover? Well, stranger things have happened.